The first gunshot rang out like a thunderclap, sending Madeline Morrison ducking behind the overturned wagon. Her heart hammered against her ribs as dust billowed around her, the acrid smell of gunpowder hanging in the air of Eureka Springs, Arkansas, in the summer of 1878. The stagecoach robbery had happened so fast one moment she had been traveling peacefully toward her new life, and the next, chaos had erupted around her. "Stay down, miss," the driver shouted before a second shot silenced him forever. Madeline pressed her body against the hot, dry earth, her fingers digging into the dirt as tears streamed down her face. The other passengers were either dead or had fled into the surrounding woods. She was alone, trapped between the bandits and the unforgiving wilderness. "Check for valuables and kill any survivors," a gruff voice ordered. Shaking, Madeline knew she had seconds to act. She crawled through the dust toward a cluster of bushes, her blue traveling dress catching on thorns as she desperately sought cover. A searing pain suddenly cut across her face as a bullet grazed her cheek, sending her tumbling down a steep embankment. The world spun, dirt and sky blurring together as she rolled. When she finally came to a stop, darkness claimed her. When Madeline regained consciousness, the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and reds. Her face burned with pain, and when she touched her cheek, her fingers came away sticky with blood. The wound ran from her temple down to her jawline, a jagged, angry line that would forever mark her. She struggled to her feet, disoriented and alone in the vast Arkansas wilderness. For 3 days, she wandered, following a creek that she hoped would lead to civilization. Her dress was torn, her face caked with dried blood, and hunger gnawed at her stomach. On the third evening, she spotted smoke rising above the trees of a ranch, nestled in a valley between rolling hills. Madeline approached cautiously, her strength nearly gone. The main house was modest but well built, with a large barn and corral beside it. A man was brushing down a chestnut mare, his back to her. As she stepped into the yard, a twig snapped beneath her boot. The man whirled around, hand instantly dropping to the pistol at his hip. His eyes, the color of the sky at dusk, widened at the sight of her. "Good Lord, miss," he said, releasing his grip on the gun. "You look half dead." Madeline opened her mouth to speak, but the world tilted beneath her feet. The last thing she remembered was the man rushing forward, his strong arms catching her before she hit the ground. When she awoke, she was lying in a bed, clean sheets pulled up to her chin. The room was simple: a washstand, a chest of drawers, and a chair where the man from the yard sat watching her. In the lamplight, she could see him clearly. Tall and lean, with sun-bronzed skin, a strong jaw dusted with stubble, and those striking blue eyes. "You're awake," he said, his voice deep but gentle. "I was starting to worry." Madeline tried to sit up but winced at the effort. "How long have I been here?" "Nearly a day." He stood and poured water from a pitcher into a cup. "I'm Wade Zimmerman. This is my ranch." "Madeline Morrison," she replied, accepting the water gratefully. As she drank, she became acutely aware of the bandage on her face. Her free hand flew up to touch it. "I cleaned and dressed it as best I could," Wade explained. "My neighbor, Mrs. Holloway, helped. She's a bit of a healer around these parts." Madeline's throat tightened. "Is it?" "Very bad." Wade hesitated, and that was answer enough. "It'll heal," he said finally. "The main thing is you're alive." "The stagecoach," she whispered. "There were bandits. They killed the others, I think." Wade nodded grimly. "Sheriff Daniels rode out after I found you. He confirmed it, the Blackwell gang, most likely. They've been terrorizing the area for months." Madeline closed her eyes, memories of the attack washing over her. "I was coming to Eureka Springs to teach. The school board hired me based on references from Boston. "Boston, you're a long way from home." "I have no home," she said softly. "My parents died last winter. There was nothing left for me there." Wade studied her for a moment. "Well, you're welcome to stay here until you're recovered. My ranch hand, Tom, and I manage this place, but there's plenty of room." "I couldn't impose, it's no imposition," he insisted. "Besides, you're in no condition to go anywhere just yet." Madeline wanted to argue, but exhaustion pulled at her. As she drifted back to sleep, she was vaguely aware of Wade adjusting her blanket, his touch surprisingly gentle for hands so weathered by work. The next few days passed in a blur of sleep and brief periods of wakefulness. Mrs. Holloway, a kindly widow from the neighboring ranch, visited daily to change Madeline's bandages and bring fresh herbs for healing poultices. Wade checked on her regularly, bringing meals and sitting with her while she ate. On the fifth day, Madeline felt strong enough to leave the bed. She found a simple cotton dress laid out for her, one of Mrs. Holloway's. Wade explained when he brought her breakfast. "I thought you might want something clean to wear," he said, setting the tray down. "Your traveling dress was beyond saving, I'm afraid." "Thank you," she said, genuinely touched by his thoughtfulness. "For everything. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't found me." Wade shrugged, uncomfortable with her gratitude. Anyone would have done the same, but Madeline knew that wasn't true. In her 22 years, she had learned that kindness like his was rare. "Sheriff Daniels will be stopping by today," Wade continued. "He'll want to hear your account of what happened." Fear flickered in Madeline's chest. "Do you think they'll come looking for me? The bandits?" Wade's expression darkened. "They have no way of knowing you survived. But if it makes you feel safer, I've got men watching the property day and night." It did make her feel safer, though not for the reason he thought. There was something about Wade Zimmerman that made Madeline believe he would protect her, no matter the cost. Later that morning, she ventured out onto the porch, wrapped in a shawl despite the summer heat. The ranch spread out before her, fields of grass where cattle grazed, a garden plot bursting with vegetables, the barn and stables where Wade was working with his horses. He moved with the easy confidence of a man who knew his place in the world. As if sensing her gaze, Wade looked up and waved. Madeline waved back, then quickly ducked her head, her hand instinctively rising to cover the bandage on her face. Sheriff Daniels arrived shortly after midday, a grizzled man with a stern face that softened when he saw Madeline. "Miss Morrison," he said, removing his hat. "Glad to see you're recovering." Recounting the stagecoach attack was painful, but Madeline forced herself to remember every detail that might help catch the bandits. When she finished, Sheriff Daniels nodded grimly. "Sounds like the Blackwell gang, all right. They've hit 3 coaches in the last month. We'll catch them, miss, that I promise you." "And in the meantime?" Wade asked, his hand resting protectively on the back of Madeline's chair. "In the meantime, she should stay put. Safer here than in town, especially if they do realize there was a survivor." The sheriff stood to leave. "I'll send word to the school board that you're here, Miss Morrison. I'm sure they'll be willing to delay your start until you're fully recovered." After he left, a heavy silence fell between Wade and Madeline. Finally, Wade spoke. "You're welcome to stay as long as you need. The teaching position will wait." Madeline nodded, not trusting her voice. The thought of standing before a classroom, all those young eyes staring at her scarred face, filled her with dread. How could she teach children who would be frightened or repulsed by her appearance? The days stretched into weeks. Madeline's strength returned, and she began helping around the ranch, tending the garden, preparing meals, mending clothes. Wade never asked when she planned to leave, and she never offered. They fell into an easy routine, their initial awkwardness giving way to comfortable companionship. Wade, she discovered, was 30 years old and had inherited the ranch from his father 5 years earlier. He was well respected in Eureka Springs for his fair dealings and generosity during hard times. What surprised Madeline most was his love of books every evening. He read by lamplight, everything from poetry to adventure tales. "My mother insisted I get an education," he explained one night when Madeline commented on his library. "Said being a rancher didn't mean I had to be ignorant." "She sounds like a wise woman." "She was," Wade said softly. "She died when I was 16, influenza." Madeline reached out impulsively and squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry." He turned his hand over to clasp hers, a simple gesture that sent warmth spreading through her chest. "I think she would have liked you," he said, his eyes meeting hers. Madeline quickly looked away, suddenly self-conscious of the bandage she still wore, though Mrs. Holloway had said the wound was healing well. As summer gave way to fall, Madeline received a letter from the school board, inquiring about her intentions. They had found a temporary teacher, but were holding the position for her if she still wanted it. The letter sat unanswered on her dresser for days as she wrestled with her decision. One crisp October morning, Madeline was hanging laundry when Wade approached, leading his favorite horse, Thunder. "I thought you might like to ride out to the north pasture with me," he said. "It's a beautiful day for it." Madeline hesitated. She had avoided leaving the ranch, afraid of encountering strangers who would stare at her face. The bandage was gone now, replaced by an angry red scar that cut across her cheek like a bolt of lightning. "I don't know how to ride," she admitted. Wade smiled. "Thunder's gentle as a lamb." "You can ride with me." Before she could overthink it, Madeline found herself agreeing. Wade helped her onto the horse, then swung up behind her, his chest warm against her back as he reached around to take the reins. They rode slowly at first, giving her time to adjust to the rhythm of the horse's gait. The north pasture was awash in autumn colors, golden grasses swaying in the breeze, trees aflame with red and orange leaves. They stopped by a small pond where wild roses still bloomed despite the cooling weather. "It's beautiful," Madeline said, drinking in the scenery. "This is my favorite spot on the whole ranch," Wade confessed as he helped her down from the horse. "I come here to think when things get overwhelming." They sat by the pond, watching dragonflies skim the surface. Wade told her stories of growing up on the ranch, of cattle drives, and the characters he'd met along the way. Madeline found herself laughing more than she had in months. "You have a beautiful laugh," Wade said suddenly. Madeline's hand instinctively rose to cover her scar, a habit she'd developed. Wade gently caught her wrist, stopping her. "Don't," he said softly. "You don't have to hide from me." Their eyes met, and something shifted between them, a recognition of feelings that had been growing since that first day. Before either could speak, thunder rumbled in the distance. "Storm's coming," Wade said, reluctantly breaking the moment. "We should head back." They barely made it to the ranch before the skies opened. Laughing, they raced from the stables to the house, getting soaked in the process. In the kitchen, Wade built up the fire while Madeline made coffee. "You never answered the school board," Wade said as they sat at the table, warming their hands on their cups. Madeline stared into her coffee. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "Of what?" "Of children staring. Of parents not wanting someone like me teaching their children." Wade frowned. "Someone like you. Someone marked, scarred." The words hurt to say aloud. Wade was quiet for so long that Madeline thought she'd offended him. Finally, he stood and rolled up his sleeve, revealing a jagged scar that ran from his elbow to his wrist. "Got this when I was 17. Horse threw me into a barbed wire fence." He unbuttoned his collar to show another scar at the base of his throat. "This one's from a knife fight in Dodge City. Man tried to cheat me on a cattle sale." Madeline stared at him, understanding dawning. Scars tell our stories, Madeline. They're proof we survived. Wade reached across the table to touch her cheek, his fingers tracing the line of her scar so gently she barely felt it. This doesn't make you less beautiful. If anything, it shows your strength. Tears welled in Madeline's eyes. No one had ever spoken to her with such tenderness, such understanding. Without thinking, she leaned into his touch. The next morning, Madeline wrote to the school board, accepting the position but requesting to start after the Christmas holiday. She needed more time, she explained, to fully recover from her ordeal. The real reason, though she didn't put it in the letter, was that she wasn't ready to leave the ranch. To leave Wade. November brought the first frost and the cattle roundup. Madeline watched from the porch as Wade and his men worked from dawn to dusk, driving the herds to lower pastures for the winter. At night, exhausted but satisfied, Wade would join her by the fire, sometimes reading aloud from one of his books, sometimes just sitting in comfortable silence. One evening, as they sat together, Wade suddenly said, "There's a harvest dance in town this weekend. Would you like to go?" Madeline froze. She hadn't been to town since arriving at the ranch, hadn't faced the stares and whispers that would surely follow her. "You don't have to," Wade added quickly, seeing her distress. "I just thought, yes," Madeline interrupted, surprising herself as much as him. "I would like that." Wade's face lit up with a smile that made her heart skip. "Really? It's nothing fancy, just folks getting together at the town hall. There'll be music and dancing." "I don't know how to dance either," Madeline confessed. Wade stood and held out his hand. "Now that's something I can teach you right now." He moved the table aside to create space, then showed her the simple steps of a country dance. Madeline was stiff at first, but Wade's patience and good humor soon had her laughing and moving more freely. When he pulled her into a waltz, her breath caught at their sudden closeness. "This is how they dance back east, isn't it?" he asked, his voice low. "Yes," she managed, acutely aware of his hand at her waist, the scent of him leather and pine and something uniquely Wade. They practiced every evening that week, and by Saturday, Madeline felt confident enough in her dancing to face the prospect of the harvest celebration. What still terrified her was appearing in public with her scar visible for all to see. Mrs. Holloway arrived Saturday morning with a dress she had made for Madeline, deep green cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs. "Wade mentioned you might need something for the dance," the older woman explained. "I had this fabric saved for a special occasion." Madeline was touched by the gesture. As she tried on the dress, Mrs. Holloway watched with approval. "You look lovely, dear. That color brings out your eyes." Madeline turned to the small mirror on the wall, her gaze immediately drawn to the scar on her face. Mrs. Holloway came to stand beside her. "My late husband always said that beauty that lasts comes from within," she said gently. "And he was right. Wade sees that in you, you know." Madeline blushed. "I don't know what you mean," Mrs. Holloway chuckled. "I've known Wade Zimmerman since he was knee-high to a grasshopper. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." The words stayed with Madeline as she prepared for the dance that evening. Wade had ridden into town on business but promised to return with the buggy by sunset. As she waited, Madeline gathered her courage, deciding that for tonight, at least, she would not let her scar define her. When Wade arrived, he was wearing a clean shirt and had trimmed his beard. He stopped short when he saw Madeline in her new dress, her hair arranged in soft curls around her face. "You're beautiful," he said simply. Madeline felt her cheeks warm. "Thank you." The drive to town was pleasant, the air crisp but not cold, the sky ablaze with stars. Wade pointed out constellations as they traveled, his voice a comforting rumble in the darkness. Eureka Springs was small but prosperous. its main street lined with shops and businesses. Light and music spilled from the town hall, where lanterns had been strung across the entrance. Madeline's courage faltered as they approached. What if people stared? What if they whispered behind their hands, as if sensing her thoughts? Wade took her hand and squeezed it reassuringly. "Ready?" Madeline took a deep breath and nodded. "Ready." Inside, the hall was transformed. Tables laden with food lined the walls. A band played on a small stage and couples whirled across the floor. Heads turned as they entered, and Madeline heard the murmur of conversation dip before rising again. "Wade Zimmerman, as I live and breathe." A jovial man approached, slapping Wade on the back. "We thought you'd forgotten where town was." "Just busy with the ranch, Mayor," Wade replied easily. "Mayor Hollingsworth, allow me to introduce Miss Madeline Morrison. Madeline, this is our esteemed mayor." "The new school teacher," the mayor beamed, taking Madeline's hand. "The board was thrilled to get your letter. We've been making do with substitutes, but the children need stability." More introductions followed: the doctor and his wife, the banker, the blacksmith and his family. To Madeline's surprise and relief, no one seemed to focus on her scar. They were more interested in her background, her teaching experience, her impressions of Eureka Springs. "I haven't seen much of the town yet," she admitted to the doctor's wife. "I've been recovering at Mr. Zimmerman's ranch." "Well, we must remedy that," the woman said warmly. "Perhaps you'll join us for Sunday dinner sometime soon. I can introduce you to some of the families whose children you'll be teaching." As the evening progressed, Madeline's anxiety eased. Wade stayed close, introducing her to everyone, his hand occasionally touching the small of her back in a gesture that felt both protective and possessive. When the band struck up a lively tune, he led her onto the dance floor. "See, not so bad, is it?" he said as they moved through the steps they'd practiced. "No," Madeline agreed, smiling up at him. "Not bad at all." They danced until Madeline's feet ached pleasantly, then found a quiet corner to rest. Wade brought her punch and a plate of Mrs. Taylor's famous apple pie. "You're the talk of the town," he said, settling beside her. "Everyone's impressed with our new schoolteacher." "They're all so kind," Madeline marveled. "I was so afraid." "People here judge you by your character, not your appearance," Wade said. "Though if they did judge by appearance, you'd still come out ahead of most." The compliment, delivered with such sincerity, warmed Madeline to her core. She was about to respond when a commotion near the entrance caught their attention. Sheriff Daniels had arrived, and he was scanning the crowd with purpose. When his gaze landed on them, he made his way over quickly. "Wade, Miss Morrison," he greeted them, his expression grave. "I hate to interrupt your evening, but I thought you should know we caught one of the Blackwell gang today." Madeline felt the blood drain from her face. "Which one?" "Younger brother, name of Jeb. He's singing like a bird, hoping for leniency. Says they're planning to hit the bank here next week." The sheriff's eyes were apologetic as he looked at Madeline. He also mentioned they knew there was a survivor from the stagecoach robbery. A woman. Said his brother's been looking for her. Wade's arm came around Madeline protectively. "She's safe at the ranch." "I've got men." "That's just it," Sheriff Daniels interrupted. "According to Jeb, they've been watching your place, Wade, biding their time." The festive atmosphere of the dance suddenly felt suffocating to Madeline. Her safe haven wasn't safe at all. She had brought danger to Wade's door. "I'll double the guard," Wade was saying. "No one gets near her." "I've already sent deputies to your ranch," the sheriff assured him, "and I'll have men watching the road back tonight. But Wade, these aren't ordinary bandits. Luke Blackwell is dangerous, and he's got a personal vendetta now." Madeline's hands were trembling. "This is my fault," she whispered. "I should go leave Eureka Springs." "No," Wade said firmly. "Running won't solve anything. These men need to be stopped or they'll just keep terrorizing innocent people. He turned to the sheriff. What's your plan, Daniels? We know they're coming for the bank on Tuesday. We'll be ready for them. The sheriff's gaze softened as he looked at Madeline. Don't worry, miss. We'll keep you safe. Despite his reassurance, the joy had gone out of the evening. Wade insisted on leaving early, his jaw set in a tight line as he helped Madeline into the buggy. 2 deputies on horseback escorted them back to the ranch, where they found Wade's men on high alert, rifles ready. All quiet, Tom reported. Sheriff's men are patrolling the perimeter. Wade nodded grimly. Double the watch tonight. No one sleeps until I say so. Inside the house, Madeline paced the sitting room, unable to calm her racing thoughts. When Wade finally came in, his face was etched with concern. You should try to rest, he said. You're safe here, I promise. How can I rest knowing I've put you all in danger? Madeline cried. These men are killers, Wade. They murdered everyone on that stagecoach without hesitation. Wade crossed to her, taking her by the shoulders. Listen to me, Madeline. What happened wasn't your fault. You survived, that's all. You have nothing to be ashamed of. But your men, are doing exactly what we would do for anyone in trouble, he finished for her. His eyes held hers intently. Though I'll admit, my reasons aren't entirely selfless where you're concerned. Madeline's breath caught. What do you mean? Wade's hands slid from her shoulders to cradle her face, his thumbs gently brushing her cheeks, one smooth, one scarred. I think you know. Before she could respond, he lowered his head and kissed her. It was gentle at first, a question more than a demand. When Madeline didn't pull away, his arms encircled her, drawing her closer as the kiss deepened. When they finally parted, both breathless, Wade rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that for weeks, he confessed. Madeline's heart was hammering in her chest. Why didn't you? I was afraid you'd think I was taking advantage. You were vulnerable, recovering, and then... He hesitated. I wasn't sure if you felt the same. I do, Madeline whispered, surprising herself with her boldness. I have for some time now. Wade's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. He kissed her again, and for a moment the threat hanging over them receded. But only for a moment. A shout from outside snapped them back to reality. Wade was instantly alert, moving to the window. Stay here, he ordered, grabbing his rifle from beside the door. Lock this behind me. Madeline did as he said, her heart in her throat as she watched him disappear into the darkness. Minutes stretched like hours as she waited, straining to hear anything over the pounding of her own pulse. Finally, Wade returned, his expression grim. False alarm, he said as she let him in. One of the men thought he saw movement in the trees, but it was just a deer. Relief flooded Madeline, followed quickly by exhaustion as the tension of the evening caught up with her. Wade noticed her swaying slightly and guided her to a chair. You need to rest, he said firmly. I'll be right outside your door all night. Nothing will happen to you, I swear it. Madeline wanted to argue, to tell him he needed rest too, but the determined set of his jaw told her it would be futile. Instead, she nodded and allowed him to escort her to her room. At the doorway, he hesitated. Madeline, what I said earlier, what happened between us, I meant it. But I understand if, after all this is over, you still want to take the teaching position and live in town. Madeline reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. We'll talk about it when this is over, she promised. But Wade, I meant it too. He caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm before reluctantly letting her go. Sleep well, he said softly. I'll be right here. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded Madeline. She lay awake, listening to the occasional creak of floorboards as Wade paced outside her door. When dawn finally broke, she rose and dressed, determined to face whatever the day might bring. She found Wade in the kitchen, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep, but alert as ever. Tom and the other ranch hands were reporting on the night's watch no sign of intruders, but everyone remained vigilant. Sheriff Daniels sent word, Wade told her as she joined them. They're questioning Jeb Blackwell further today, trying to get more details about his brother's plans. The next 2 days passed in a strange limbo. Life on the ranch continued. Cattle needed tending, horses required exercise, meals had to be prepared, but an undercurrent of tension ran beneath every activity. Armed men patrolled the property day and night. Wade barely slept, insisting on taking watch himself for hours at a stretch. On Monday evening, Sheriff Daniels rode out to the ranch with news. Jeb Blackwell gave us the details of the bank job, he reported. They're coming at noon tomorrow when the bank will be fullest. Luke thinks the commotion will make it easier for them to slip away in the chaos. But you'll be waiting for them, Wade said. The sheriff nodded. We've got men positioned all around the bank and on the rooftops. They won't escape this time. He looked at Madeline. Miss Morrison, I'd like you to stay here tomorrow. There's no reason to think they know you're connected to Wade's ranch, but I'd rather not take chances. Madeline readily agreed, though the thought of Wade riding into town to join the ambush filled her with dread. After the sheriff left, she found Wade cleaning his revolver in the study. You don't have to go, she said from the doorway. The sheriff has men. Wade looked up, his expression softening when he saw her. I do have to go, Madeline. These men threatened you. They killed innocent people. I can't sit back and let others handle it. I'm afraid, she admitted, crossing to kneel beside his chair. I couldn't bear it if something happened to you because of me. Wade set the gun aside and took her hands. Nothing's going to happen, and none of this is because of you. It's because of men like Luke Blackwell, who think they can take whatever they want without consequences. He pulled her gently into his lap, cradling her against his chest, as if she were the most precious thing in the world. When this is over, he murmured into her hair, I want to court you properly, Madeline Morrison, if you'll let me. Madeline looked up at him, her heart full. I'd like that very much, Wade Zimmerman. They stayed that way for a long time, finding comfort in each other's presence as the night deepened around them. When Madeline finally retired to her room, it was with Wade's promise that he would return safely the next day. Morning brought a heavy fog that clung to the valleys and shrouded the ranch in mist. Wade and Tom prepared to ride to town, checking their weapons one last time. 3 of the ranch hands would remain behind to guard Madeline. Stay inside, Wade instructed her. Keep the doors locked. The men have orders not to let anyone near the house they don't recognize. Madeline nodded, fighting back tears as he mounted his horse. Wade looked down at her, his expression tender. I'll be back before sundown, he promised, and then we can begin the rest of our lives. She watched until he and Tom disappeared into the fog, then retreated to the house as instructed. The hours crawled by with excruciating slowness. Madeline tried to distract herself by baking bread, mending clothes, reading anything to keep her mind from imagining the worst. Shortly after noon, the time the Blackwell gang was expected to hit the bank, Madeline heard a commotion outside. Peering cautiously through the window, she saw one of the ranch hands running toward the house, his face urgent. When she opened the door, he was breathless. Miss Morrison, we've spotted riders approaching from the east. Could be nothing but with the boss in town. How many? She asked, her mouth suddenly dry. 3, maybe 4. They're keeping to the tree line, moving slow. Mitchell's gone for a closer look. Madeline's mind raced. East was the opposite direction from town. If the Blackwell gang was at the bank, who were these riders? Her question was answered moments later when gunfire erupted from the direction of the barn. The ranch hand shoved Madeline back into the house. Stay inside and lock the door. It's an ambush." Heart pounding, Madeline did as she was told. Through the window, she could see the ranch hands taking cover, returning fire against attackers she couldn't see. Then a terrible thought struck her. What if this was a diversion? What if the bank robbery had never been the real plan? As if to confirm her fears, the back door suddenly crashed open. Madeline whirled to find herself facing a man with cold eyes and a scar that split his upper lip. "Well, well," he drawled, leveling a pistol at her. "The one that got away. You've led us on quite a chase, girl. Luke Blackwell." It had to be. Madeline backed away, her eyes darting around for a weapon, anything she could use to defend herself. "Your boyfriend and the sheriff are busy in town," Blackwell continued, advancing slowly. "By the time they realize it was a setup, we'll be long gone." His gaze raked over her, lingering on the scar on her face. "Though it looks like one of my boys already left his mark on you." Madeline's back hit the wall. There was nowhere left to retreat. But as Blackwell reached for her, a defiance she didn't know she possessed surged through her. She was not the same frightened woman who had crawled away from the stagecoach robbery. She had survived once. She would survive again. With a cry, she grabbed a heavy iron skillet from the stove and swung it with all her might. It connected with Blackwell's arm, sending his gun clattering to the floor. Cursing, he lunged for her, but Madeline was already moving, darting toward the door. She never made it. Blackwell caught her by the hair, yanking her back with such force that she lost her footing and fell. The outlaw stood over her, rage contorting his features. "You'll pay for that," he snarled, reaching down to haul her up. The gunshot was deafening in the confined space of the kitchen. Blackwell staggered back, a look of surprise on his face as crimson bloomed across his chest. He fell heavily, revealing Wade in the doorway, his revolver still smoking. "Wade," Madeline sobbed, scrambling to her feet and into his arms. He held her tightly, his heart hammering against her cheek. "Are you hurt? Did he touch you?" She shook her head, words failing her as relief flooded through her system. Wade cupped her face, examining her closely as if to reassure himself she was truly unharmed. "I realized it was a trap," he explained breathlessly. "The bank robbery was a diversion. Tom and I rode back as fast as we could." Outside, the gunfire had ceased. Tom appeared in the doorway, his face grim but satisfied. "Got 2 of them. Third one's wounded but alive. Sheriff's men are right behind us." Wade nodded, still holding Madeline close. "It's over," he told her softly. "It's really over now." And it was. With Luke Blackwell dead and his gang captured or killed, the reign of terror that had gripped the area came to an end. Sheriff Daniels arrived with his deputies to take custody of the surviving outlaw and remove Blackwell's body. "You both showed remarkable courage," he told Wade and Madeline later as they sat on the porch, still shaken but safe. "The whole town will be grateful. Those men hurt a lot of people." After the sheriff left, a profound quiet settled over the ranch. The guards were dismissed, the normal rhythm of life could resume. But for Madeline and Wade, nothing would ever be quite the same. That evening, as they sat before the fire, Wade took Madeline's hand. "I meant what I said yesterday," he told her. "I want to court you properly, I want." He hesitated, then plunged ahead. "I want a future with you, Madeline. Here on this ranch if you'll have it, if you'll have me." Madeline studied his face in the firelight, the strong jaw, the kind eyes that had looked at her with such tenderness from the first day. She thought of the teaching position waiting for her in town, and she realized that while she still wanted to teach, she wanted Wade more. "Yes," she said simply. "To all of it, yes." The joy that transformed his face was worth every hardship she had endured to reach this moment. Wade pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that left her breathless. Later, as they sat side by side watching the fire burn low, Madeline's hand unconsciously rose to touch her scar. Wade noticed the gesture and gently caught her hand. "You're still self-conscious about it." It wasn't a question, but Madeline nodded anyway. "I try not to be. Everyone has been so kind not mentioning it, but I see myself in the mirror and—" "And what?" Wade prompted when she trailed off. "And I wonder how you can find me beautiful," she whispered. "How anyone can." Wade turned to face her fully. With infinite tenderness, he brushed his fingers along the line of her scar from temple to jaw. "This is part of your story now," he said softly. "Part of what makes you who you are: brave, resilient, stronger than you know." His touch was so gentle it brought tears to her eyes. "Beauty remains, Madeline. It was never gone." The words touched something deep inside her, a wound that had nothing to do with her face and everything to do with how she saw herself. For the first time since the attack, Madeline began to believe that perhaps she could be whole again. That perhaps the scar wasn't the end of her story, but merely a chapter in a much longer tale, one that included Wade, and love, and a future brighter than any she had imagined for herself. As winter settled over Eureka Springs, Madeline and Wade's courtship blossomed. True to his word, he did things properly, escorting her to church on Sundays, taking her to dinner at the hotel in town, bringing her wildflowers he found on his rides around the ranch. The townsfolk accepted them as a couple without surprise. It seemed everyone had seen what was growing between them long before they acknowledged it themselves. The school board was accommodating when Madeline explained that she would need to live at the ranch rather than in town. A buggy and driver would be provided to bring her to and from the schoolhouse each day. "It's highly irregular," the board president admitted. "But after what you've been through, and considering Mr. Zimmerman's standing in the community, we're willing to make an exception." Madeline began teaching in January, when the new school term started. Her first day was terrifying. 28 faces turned toward her as she entered the classroom, many of them showing curiosity about the scar on her face. But Madeline had prepared herself. Before the children could ask, she told them the story of the stagecoach robbery, careful to omit the most frightening details while emphasizing the bravery of Sheriff Daniels and his men in bringing the outlaws to justice. "Sometimes," she concluded, "life leaves marks on us. But those marks don't define who we are or what we can become." After that, the scar was simply part of who Miss Morrison was, no more remarkable than her brown eyes or her talent for bringing history to life through stories. The children adored her, and soon, parents were stopping her on the street to thank her for inspiring their sons and daughters. Wade came to town every afternoon to drive her home, a gesture that never failed to make Madeline's heart swell with affection. The sight of him waiting outside the schoolhouse, hat in hand, became the highlight of her day. In March, as the first signs of spring began to appear, Wade took Madeline back to the north pasture where they had spent that perfect autumn afternoon. The pond was ringed with early wildflowers, and a picnic basket waited beneath the same tree where they had sat months earlier. "I wanted to bring you back here," Wade said as he spread a blanket on the ground. "This place has always been special to me, but now it's special for a different reason." "What reason is that?" Madeline asked. Though she thought she knew, Wade smiled, taking her hands and drawing her down beside him on the blanket. "This is where I first realized I was falling in love with you." Madeline's breath caught. They had spoken of affection, of caring deeply for one another, but neither had used the word love until now. "That day," Wade continued, "when you laughed at my stories and your eyes lit up looking at the wildflowers, I knew I never wanted to be without you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Madeline's heart began to race as he opened it to reveal a delicate gold ring set with a single pearl. "It was my mother's," he explained. My father gave it to her when he asked her to be his wife. Wade took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving hers. Madeline Morrison, I love you more than I ever thought possible. Will you marry me? Tears of joy filled Madeline's eyes. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Wade, I love you too. The ring fit perfectly, gleaming in the spring sunlight as Wade slipped it onto her finger. He kissed her then, a kiss full of promise and passion and plans for their future. They were married in May in a ceremony that the entire town attended. Mrs. Holloway wept openly as Madeline walked down the aisle in a gown of ivory satin, her hair adorned with flowers from Wade's garden. Sheriff Daniels stood as Wade's best man, and the schoolchildren formed a choir that sang as the couple exchanged their vows. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Wade lifted Madeline's veil and kissed her with such tenderness that several guests were seen dabbing at their eyes. No one looked at the scar on her cheek. They saw only the radiance of a woman deeply in love and loved in return. The reception was held at the ranch, transformed for the occasion with lanterns and ribbons and tables laden with food prepared by the women of Eureka Springs. Wade and Madeline danced beneath the stars, surrounded by friends who had become like family. "Are you happy, Mrs. Zimmerman?" Wade murmured as they swayed to the music. Madeline looked up at him, her heart so full she thought it might burst. "More than I ever dreamed possible," she replied truthfully. Later, when the guests had departed and they were finally alone, Wade carried Madeline across the threshold of their home now, in truth as well as in feeling. In the privacy of their bedroom, lit only by moonlight, Madeline felt a moment of shyness as Wade's hands moved to the buttons of her gown. "Wait," she said softly. Wade immediately stilled his movements. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," Madeline assured him. I want you to know that there are other scars. From the attack. They're not as visible as the one on my face, but Wade silenced her with a gentle kiss. "Madeline," he said when he pulled back, "there is not a single part of you that I won't cherish. Not a mark, not a scar, not a memory. All of it makes you who you are, the woman I love." His words dissolved her insecurity. With trembling fingers, she began to unbutton his shirt. Wade watched her, his eyes darkening with desire as she revealed the skin beneath, tanned and scarred from years of hard work. "See," he said, taking her hand and placing it over a jagged line on his ribs. "We match." Madeline laughed softly, the sound turning to a sigh as Wade resumed undressing her with reverent hands. When they came together as husband and wife, it was with a passion born of deep understanding and abiding love. In the years that followed, Madeline continued teaching, becoming known throughout the county for her innovative methods and the loyalty she inspired in her students. Wade's ranch prospered under their joint stewardship, growing to become one of the most successful operations in the territory. Their first child, a son they named James Thomas, was born a year after their wedding, a sturdy boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's determined spirit. 2 years later, they welcomed a daughter, Sarah Elizabeth, whose laughter filled the ranch house with joy. As the children grew, Madeline would sometimes catch them looking at the scar on her face with curiosity. Like she had done with her students, she told them the story not to frighten them, but to teach them about courage and survival. "Your father saved me," she would tell them. "Not just from the bad men, but from believing that what happened to me was all that mattered." "And your mother saved me right back," Wade would add, gathering them all into his arms. "She taught me that a home needs more than just strong walls and a sturdy roof. It needs love to make it complete." On their 10th wedding anniversary, Wade surprised Madeline with a trip back to the North Pasture, now a traditional spot for family picnics and special occasions. As they sat by the pond, their children playing nearby, Wade took her hand, his thumb brushing over the wedding band that had not left her finger since he placed it there. 10 years, he marveled. Sometimes it feels like we've always been together. Madeline leaned against his shoulder, content in a way she had never imagined possible before coming to Eureka Springs. And sometimes it feels like we're just beginning. Wade turned to look at her, his eyes as blue and clear as they had been the day they met. With gentle fingers, he traced the line of her scar, faded now but still visible, a permanent reminder of how their story began. "Beauty remains," he said softly, echoing the words that had once healed her heart. "It grows stronger every day." As the sun set over their land, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Madeline and Wade Zimmerman walked hand in hand toward home, their children running ahead, their future stretching out before them like a road leading ever onward, not without its bumps and turns, but traveled together, with love lighting the way.